Okay then. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ypres. Hopefully that's how you say that. Actually, look at this. Look, World War I Battle of the Third. It was right in front of my face. Why did I do that? Oh my God. Okay, you know what? Battles of Third Ypres. I don't know which goes first. 1 through 7. Okay. I guess this will be a two-part series. If you remember this game, this company, it's the Australian, I forgot the name, but it's Australian something, but they made these really good, like, learning documentaries that are games, um, so they're extremely good. Hopefully this will load for me. No, you son of a gun. Okay. You are entering the Ypres salient and the battlefields of the Third Ypres. The main British offensive of 1917, also known as the Battle of Passchendaele. The offensive is a defining event in the history of World War I. This first of two map sections details events of the August and September period of the offensive, focusing on the Battle of Polygon Wood, and the actions that led up to it. Experience the first part of the story of the Third Ypres as it unfolds across the battlefields.
On the morning of the 31st July 1917, an ambitious British offensive to drive Germany out of Belgium began under the command of Field Marshal Sir Douglas Haig. Involving soldiers of the British, Dominion and French armies, it continued until the 10th of November before making way for the Battle of Cambrai and the pause in major fighting brought about by the harshest of the winter months. To recall 3rd Ypres a century later is to look upon a series of battles that expose the most gruesome conditions of the Great War. A combination of brutal attrition with newly evolved artillery tactics. A shockingly bleak environment of pummeled, waterlogged battlefields, where mud claimed men and horses in their thousands, and clouds of poisonous gas drifted silently across the desolation, whilst all the while the greatest amount of artillery fired anywhere in the war fell on the morass of puddled craters, splintered tree stumps, ruined farmhouses, and menacing pillboxes. The British Prime Minister at the time, David Lloyd George, confided in the editor of a British newspaper weeks after the conclusion of 3rd Ypres. If people really knew, the war would be stopped tomorrow. But of course they don't, and they can't know. The correspondents don't write, and the censorship won't pass the truth. The thing is horrible and beyond human nature to bear, and I feel I can't go on with this bloody business. The series of battles that made up 3rd Ypres have become more popularly known as the Battle of Passchendaele. The village of Passchendaele rests atop the last ridge of the Ypres salient, 11 kilometers east of Ypres itself, and 8 kilometers from a railway junction at Roulers, vital to the supply system of the German Fourth Army. In the broader ambitions of Haig's initial strategy, Passchendaele would have been a jumping-off point for the Allied forces in their push further into Belgium, rather than marking the end of the offensive. But this retitling of 3rd Ypres to Passchendaele masks the extent of Haig's original strategy, which included not only driving the German army from Belgium, but in the process destroying the German U-boat bases at Ostend and Zeebrugge. This grand scheme reflected an awareness of the magnitude of world events that were in play by the middle of 1917. Against this backdrop of worsening fortune for the Allies, Britain assumed the main burden for launching the next offensive. Senior political and military figures put forward arguments for and against Haig's strategy, but he prevailed, and planning went ahead for the July offensive to be launched outside of Ypres. For the push through Belgium, Haig planned to use the Fifth Army commanded by General Sir Hubert Gough as the spearhead. General Sir Herbert Plumer's Second Army would support the right flanks, and the French First Army the left. Gough thus took responsibility for planning the first stages of the offensive. After a preliminary operation at Menin on the 7th of June to clear important high ground held by the German Fourth Army, 3rd Ypres commenced on the 31st of July, 1917. After a 2-week-long artillery bombardment of German positions, 9 British and 4 French divisions launched an assault on Plumer Ridge. They captured many of their objectives, but it was not the sweeping victory that Gough or Haig had hoped for. Gough had planned a 3,600-meter advance on the first day, but when the battle ended 3 days later, his troops had advanced about 2/3 of that distance, hindered by rainfall, muddy terrain, and fierce German counterattacks. In his plan to advance northeast, Gough had overlooked the German positions on the Gellivelt Plateau to the southeast of Ypres, where artillery fire could be directed against advancing Allied troops. Shortly after the battle had begun, heavy rain had begun to fall. Over the years of war, the Ypres salient had been transformed by sustained artillery fire from a well-irrigated and well-drained arable landscape into a mire of churned and pitted earth, a muddy, perilous morass that continually hampered operations and created unbearable conditions for soldiers. Haig paused operations after Plumer Ridge for a week to wait out the weather and consolidate the positions his army had captured. The second major battle of the offensive took place at Langemarck between the 16th and the 18th of August. Whilst the attack succeeded in the north and at Langemarck itself, early advances in the south along the Gellivelt Plateau were forced back by powerful German counterattacks. The halting character of the offensive was further established as Haig paused operations again after Langemarck. This was followed by cancelling a general restart of the offensive, scheduled for the 25th of August, as captured ground was lost to German counterattacks. Langemarck instead marked a conclusion of the first stage of 3rd Ypres, in which Haig's army had suffered some 68,000 casualties. The pause allowed the British High Command to re-evaluate the offensive. Entrenched German positions on the Gellivelt Plateau had been hindering Gough's progress to the north and east. It was clear that the plateau needed to be captured before further attempts were made to push for Rouen. With the Second Army facing the challenge of assaulting the Germans on the Gellivelt Plateau, Haig replaced Gough with Plumer as operational commander of the offensive and gave him the task of capturing the plateau from the Germans. To British High On the morning of the 31st, the halting character of the offensive was further established as Haig paused operations again after Langemarck. This was followed by cancelling a general restart of the offensive, scheduled for the 25th of August, as captured ground was lost to German counterattacks. Langemarck instead marked a conclusion of the first stage of 3rd Ypres, in which Haig's army had suffered some 68,000 casualties. The pause allowed the British High Command to re-evaluate the offensive. Entrenched German positions on the Gellivelt Plateau had been hindering Gough's progress to the north and east. It was clear that the plateau needed to be captured before further attempts were made to push for Rouen. With the Second Army facing the challenge of assaulting the Germans on the Gellivelt Plateau, Haig replaced Gough with Plumer as operational commander of the offensive and gave him the task of capturing the plateau from the Germans. To British High Command, the broader ambitions of driving the German army from Belgium and capturing U-boat bases on the coast must have already begun to appear distinctly difficult to achieve. As a commander, Plumer took a more limited and methodical approach to operations than Gough. Outlining his plans to Haig on the 29th of August, he requested 3 weeks to prepare the second stage of the offensive, in part to wait out the rain and allow the ground to dry, so that he could bring his artillery forward. Plumer wanted to use the 10th British and 1st Anzac Corps to attack the Gallivelt Plateau, with the 2nd Anzac Corps in reserve. The attack would proceed with a 6-day pause in between each operation to allow time for artillery, supplies, and fresh troops to move forward. Having gained their objectives, the infantry would dig in to meet any German counterattacks. This tactic of bite and hold, in which infantry advanced behind a creeping barrage of artillery and consolidated and defended territory gained, was the ideal of the set-piece operation. On the 20th of September, Plumer launched his first attack at the Menin Road. The 1st and 2nd Australian Divisions, part of 1st Anzac Corps, spearheaded the operation. Sergeant Sinclair Edward Hunt of the 55th Battalion, part of the 5th Australian Division, later wrote in his diary, "So far the offensive had been favoured with ideal weather conditions, commencing 3 weeks before the advance. Australians who passed us on the way back after the first push spoke of complete victory, so that given dry weather, we all felt the utmost confidence. Give up, mate. The famous concrete pillboxes and the new gas of which we'd heard so much diminished in terror the nearer we approached to them." Menin Road was a success across its entire front and a strong endorsement of Plumer's strategy. Drier weather had prevailed and had clearly been an important factor in the Allied success. The 1st and 2nd Australian Divisions were quickly relieved and replaced by the 4th and 5th Divisions, while preparations for the next attack went ahead. It would become known as the Battle of Polygon Wood. Plumer's plan for the operation of Polygon Wood was authorised by Field Marshal Douglas Haig on the 21st of September. The 1st Anzac Corps was to make the main attack, carrying the line forward 1,100 metres. On the right of them was the British 10th Corps, attacking with 2 divisions. On the left was Gough's 5th Army. The plan called for 2 objectives to be captured. The first designated the red line and the blue line. The artillery would disorient and keep the enemy under cover whilst the infantry advanced and assaulted the defences. Meanwhile, heavy guns, such as 60-pounders, would attempt to deal with the more distant German artillery, using techniques such as flash spotting and sound ranging, as well as aerial photography to locate the enemy batteries. The infantry was the key to capturing ground and killing the enemy, whilst artillery was the key to protecting the infantry from the enemy's guns and from counterattacks. Coordinating artillery, infantry, and aircraft was crucial to achieving operational success, as was resisting the temptation to push the infantry beyond artillery range. But German defensive tactics had also evolved to counter this offensive strategy. Realizing that with a sufficient amount of artillery a front line could be swept away, the German army developed instead a series of mutually supporting strongpoints. These were not easily destroyed by artillery and required enemy infantry to take their time subduing them one by one. Alongside the development of specialist German infantry divisions, the pillbox was a key element of this tactic. But although this had been the defensive strategy at Menin Road, it had not stopped the British bite and hold operation. Crown Prince Ruprecht, the German army commander on the Western Front, ordered a counterattack to recapture the German defensive positions in front of Polygon Wood, concerned the British would take the Gallivelt Plateau with their next attack. This counterattack would disrupt Plumer's operations and buy time for German reinforcements to arrive. It would target the British southern flank and be carried out by Group Whiteshot forces. Their objective lay south of Polygon Wood, between Reutel and Menin Roads. German infantry battalions involved in the counterattack assembled during the night of the 24th and into the early morning of the 25th. When the counterattack began just after 5 a.m., Allied soldiers were either resting or busy preparing for the attack on Polygon Wood the following day. German artillery hampered their own infantry's advance when their shells fell among their troops rather than in front of them. The blunder forced the first wave of the German advance to retreat. 30 minutes after the first wave's failed attack, the German artillery was back in action. The troops following behind its fire were advancing on the southern flank of the Allied front line. Within 4 hours, they'd pushed back elements of the 33rd Division and reached the Menin Road. Fighting continued throughout the day, as British and Australian officers at the scene struggled to respond to the German counterattack and protect their southern flank. Although the counterattack failed in its objective to delay the attack on Polygon Wood, it had inflicted substantial damage on the British southern flank, and in particular to the 33rd Division, which suffered 2,905 casualties. A German Second Army intelligence summary later revealed that there had been the greatest concentration of artillery on a German divisional sector ever recorded, nearly 4 times the usual quantity. The Australian 5th Division would go into battle the next day, concerned about the strength of support on their right. Despite the massive increase in German artillery and news of the difficult fighting to repel the enemy counterattack, officers of 1st Anzac Corps were informed that there was no question of postponing the attack, regardless of the southern flank's vulnerability. Late that evening, Major General Hobbs, commander of the 5th Division, phoned 15th Brigade Commander Brigadier General Pompey Elliott to tell him the following day's objectives and to advise that he was sending Elliott 2 battalions to strengthen his position. Elliott had informed Hobbs that the attack on Polygon Wood was out of the question as he had taken too many casualties. But Hobbs told Elliott, "I know it is difficult, but we've got to do it. The attack has got to go in tomorrow morning." At around midnight, Lieutenant Colonels Purser of the 29th Battalion and Toll of the 31st Battalion arrived at Elliott's headquarters at Hooge. There, they received a hurried briefing on the operation due to start at 10 to 6 the following morning. Polygon Wood was a plantation forest in the path of the Australian advance on the Gallivelt Plateau. It was also known as Racecourse Wood, as there was a track at its centre, open land on which the Germans had constructed a series of pillboxes. By the morning of the 26th of September, the wood was little more than a splintered landscape of tree stumps and churned earth. Before the war, Polygon Wood had been used by the Belgian army as a practice ground, and within it stood a large mound known as the Butte. Today, it is the site of the Australian 5th Division Memorial, commemorating the Australian casualties at Polygon Wood, which numbered more than 5,700. In the days leading up to the 26th of September, engineers had worked to lay plank roads and duckboards up to the front line. Medical personnel positioned their aid posts as close to the front line as possible, in order to give immediate attention to the wounded before they were transferred down the line to field hospitals. First via stretcher bearers, then horse-drawn and motorized ambulances at points along the Menin Road. Coming the other way from Ypres, a long procession of supplies, food, water, artillery and ammunition, engineering equipment and duckboards were being moved up toward the front. Substantial artillery, a hallmark of Plumer's strategy, was hauled up the line, including 205 heavy guns, providing one for every 9 meters of front. This constant procession of essential logistics snaked gradually through the wrecked Flemish landscape under German artillery fire. Alongside the principal infantry and artillery attack, the Royal Flying Corps would provide intelligence from the air, signaling the location of troop positions and dropping intelligence reports over divisional headquarters. By the 25th, some 10,000 men of the 4th and 5th Divisions were in place behind the Allied front line. And that night, about 4,000 of them began a stealthy advance to the jumping-off lines in preparation for the main assault. This took place after a difficult day fighting off the German counterattack on the southern flank. Just before 0 hour at 6 a.m. on the 26th of September, British and Australian artillery opened up on German positions, and a curtain of fire began to fall 180 meters ahead of the first wave of infantry. Captain Alexander Ellis of the 29th Battalion vividly described the start of the battle. Our artillery opened in a single magnificent crash, and thousands of shells screamed through the air and burst in a long strike.